Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Friday Society. I'm here with Alana Kessler. She's the founder of Be Well by AK. She's a registered dietitian, an expert registered yoga teacher, an Ayurvedic specialist, and so much more. She's a graduate of NYU with a bachelor's and master's of science in clinical nutrition. And we're going to hear all about how she fuses Eastern and Western medicine, how she works with hormonal imbalances, and really just how she started this amazing company. So, welcome, Alana.
Hi, so nice to be here. I'm so happy. I'm so excited.
Me too. So, for everyone listening, we did also just have a really fun, good 10-minute conversation on all the things already. So, I can tell this is
We
going to be a
did.
great conversation, and I'm super excited. Do you
Same.
want to give our listeners a little bit of an introduction to yourself, a bit about your journey, maybe getting your RD certification and founding Be Well by AK?
Yes, I would love to. This has been a labor of complete love for me. I live, breathe, and just exude wellness, and just my passion is in helping people, find balance and harmony within themselves, and just really understand themselves so that they can live this really fulfilling, illuminated, joyful life. And my company was really born and continues to just be created out of my own personal experience. So I got my RD certification in 2005, I believe, 2005. And, my journey to get the RD, I have to be honest and say, wasn't from the healthiest place. I struggled with an eating disorder for many years. I struggled with feeling really dissociated from myself. I became a bit obsessive about food. And I would say that my initial nutrition, um, you know, introduction to it wasn't from the healthiest, and also wasn't from the place that was motivated by optimal wellness. Right. So, like anybody who is in some sort of addictive patterning, oftentimes your focus is so much about what you're trying to control. And so I would say that my nutrition RD certification initially was probably motivated by that, kind of trying to get the most understanding that I could about food so I can control food. And then even yoga. So I started practicing yoga in 1998, which was my freshman year of college. So, and again, yoga also kind of was initially inspired by exercise and by getting my body. I remember seeing that Jennifer Aniston had done yoga or something around that time. And so I was like, let me try that. I want her abs or something. So it was definitely physically motivated, but yoga was one of those things that I immediately felt this sense of connection and home, and just this internal sense of comfort that I hadn't felt my whole life. And I somehow knew that this was something that was going to be with me and that I couldn't not do. And so, I continued to practice yoga. I was committed, and I became committed right away. My first yoga class was at Crunch Gym on Lafayette in 1998. And I bought Rodney Yee's VHS tapes, and then I bought like Brian Kest DVDs and Mark Blanchard DVDs. And at the same time, I was, getting my bachelor's in nutrition, getting my master's in nutrition. I got my RD around that time. Once I graduated from college, I started working at St. Luke's Roosevelt as a clinical dietitian on staff there. So I did the regular med floors. I also worked the ICUs and the CCUs. So I got really great experience in a nice landscape around science and clinical nutrition as it applies to medicine, right? Like Western medicine. But at the same time, I was committed to my yoga practice, and I was studying meditation, and I started to get very into Ayurveda. I started to understand how energy, environment, medicine all influenced each other in so many ways. I couldn't put language to it, but I started to feel into my body. And I'll tell you that at the same time, I still was struggling with my eating disorder. So I struggled with bulimia from the time I was 16 until I was, probably, in my like early 30s. So I'm 40 now. So in my early 30s. And
I'm sorry, you look like you're 21. I'm like, you're what? I'm really excited to hear all the tips and all the things. But
Well,
no, I
thanks.
mean, that's a long time to struggle
Yeah.
with an eating disorder.
So it really was. And it was really it was crazy. I mean, you talk about living a double life, you talk about being a high functioning addict, you talk about like really just dissociative patterning and just surviving and what that does to your body. I would say, you say I look 21 and I just turned 40 in January. I looked older in 2003. I looked older in my 20s, I was inflamed, I was bloated, I had adult acne, like there was just so many things. And still I was, but I was doing all the traditional self-care stuff, right? So like I was going to yoga, I was meditating, I was getting massages. And not to say that that hasn't helped me probably over the last 20 years, as it's become more consistent, but so many of the other things that we'll talk about have been important as well. So I worked at St. Luke's Roosevelt. I was living kind of this double life. And at a certain point when I was 26, so probably like around 2006, 2007, I realized that I had hit my limit. Like my double life, I just couldn't do it anymore, basically. Like I also had hit a limit with the clinical nutrition. Like I felt like I was phoning it in.
It felt like out of alignment.
Yeah. And I approached my work as an artist. Like you'll notice even in our pre-podcast conversations, like I receive people and I immediately get like this sense, and it's like an art, right? Like every person for me is like an art piece potential. And like we collaborate together on building this architecture of wellness. So every time I meet someone new, I kind of receive them as their wellness parts. And it's almost like how I do it. So my work is very artistic. So once I hit a ceiling at the hospital and all this yoga and mindfulness stuff, I was like, I can't do this anymore. And I actually, kind of did it, I guess, early. I'm like the earliest millennial. I was born in 81. So I'm like on the cusp. Yeah. So it's like, so I kind of quit my job. Like I was like, I'm not doing this. And I literally quit. Like I went into my manager. And so one of the things that I used to do at the hospital was I would leave the hospital for 2 hours a day to go to yoga, because I liked the class from 10:45 to 12:30. And so I would leave my job and I would tell my colleagues to cover for me for like 45 minutes. Because at around 11:30, I could get away with maybe being at lunch. You know what I mean? So I would leave at like 10:30 and then I would go to yoga and I'd come back and I would do my job. But at a certain point, I realized that like lying about it and the stress in the yoga class that I was so I finally told my manager that I wanted to take yoga class in the middle of the day and I would stay late to, to make up the hours. And she said no. And on the spot, I quit. I said, you know what? I'm out. Like, I can't do this.
Wow.
Yeah, I was like, I'm done. Like, I can't do this. And I got certified in teaching yoga. This was like around 2006, 2007. And I went traveling through Southeast Asia with a friend. Nothing to do with yoga, really. Just he had actually gotten his, he passed the bar. And so I just tagged along on his trip. And when I came back from the trip, I started one of my colleagues from the hospital had quit and said, how would you like to start a wellness brand that is nutrition, yoga, and cooking? And I said, yeah, okay. But at that time, I also had realized that I was really struggling with my eating disorder. So I said, you know what? I don't really want to do nutrition. I want to focus more on the yoga. I'm not going to counsel nutrition because I don't really feel connected to it right now, but I'm going to counsel. I want to do yoga. I want to teach yoga and help people get into their bodies, which is like another one of my tenets, right? To get you out of your head and into your body. And I was like, that's what I want to do. Get people into their bodies when they're struggling with their wellness, and then get them to be inspired to ask more questions about things that are going to be good for their wellness, right? So once they start, that's what was happening for me. Like I started to ask questions about what foods are good. Like as I got connected to my body, I was like, oh, you know what, this food doesn't feel good as it digests, because I actually was feeling my digestion. You know what I mean? So so we started this company called Potion Complementary Nutrition, which is called POSHAN, which means nourish in Sanskrit. And so we started that company for about 10 months. And I realized that what I wanted was to build a community. I wanted to open up like a yoga studio that we had community be the foundation, and then people would build the blocks of their wellness as they wanted. And I would be there to provide the support, whether it was yoga. I got certified in Ayurveda. So I was like starting to feel like I felt more connected to nutrition from that place. She didn't want to do it. So we split up very amicably. But then I opened up a yoga studio in Williamsburg called Sangha Yoga Shala in 2008, end of 2008, which I owned till 2017. And then when I closed the studio in 2017, the motivation for closing was because I felt like the yoga studio was my guru, where I learned so much about how to heal, and it held the container for me. And it taught me so much of those nuances about what my now brand Be Well by AK provides to people. And I realized that from an energetic perspective, because so much of now what I work on with my clients is understanding your energy archetype, which in your energy constitution, whether it's like more feminine energetically or masculine energetically, I realized that being the owner of a studio was way too masculine for me. Like, I didn't want to do the strategizing, managing, operations, constantly responding, having to do that. I was much more of an artist, and I kind of went back to my artist self, which I think I lost when I was very young with my eating disorder. You know, so the studio really helped me reconnect back to my values, my needs, my desires. And essentially Be Well by AK is basically that journey with other people now.
I'm like, we're only 11 minutes in and I'm already nervous that we're not going to have enough time, because I just want to hear, I want to hear you talk forever about this, but there's so much there that I just am so excited to unpack. So I do want to talk about the artistry in Ayurveda and in these diagnoses and things, because even just, you're talking about when you were 21 and you looked older then than you do now. So much of that, I believe, and I'm not an expert, but I've dabbled around with acupuncture and with Eastern medicine, and I very much believe in the fusion of the two. Like, I think that my personal opinion, and this is just me, but is, if something's been around for thousands of years with proven results, we can't just not take it as interest, as information that we really need to observe. So I personally have had fantastic results with acupuncture and with, herbs and everything in that realm. But I'm curious, well, okay, let's get back to this. So your website, right? So your website says, I'm just going to read it verbatim. It says, my work draws on my knowledge and several years experience working in Eastern and Western nutrition, functional medicine, Chinese medicine, Ayurveda, mindfulness, interpersonal psycho-spiritual healing, and life coaching modalities, which, like, wow, and that's everything that you're talking about, but wow. And that's a lot of expertise rolled into one platform and one offering for people. Like, there's a lot there that you can draw from. And I do want to mention this because I think this is important, that, some people, I think people get either split into like the woo-woo or the not woo-woo. And you say, don't worry, because it's not as woo-woo as it sounds. And I loved that. I was like, yes, okay, this is amazing. Like, you're taking your clinical background, but you're also saying, I've observed this, I've learned this, and I think there's a lot that we can draw from both of these things. So talk to me kind of about how you fuse Chinese medicine into your practice. Like, I know your website says, if somebody, you help people with all different types of conditions. And one of them is if someone just got a diagnosis, right? So like, if they've just gotten some sort of clinical diagnosis back, that their blood results are out of whack, how do you sort of fuse the Western and the Eastern medicine into their healing?
Yeah, so it's definitely, it's again, customized and individual. But But for the most part, I look at lab results and I look at the person and how they show up in their life, and I see what modality and therapy would be beneficial for them, right? I'm also one of those practitioners that listens first, right? So I don't look at somebody's lab results and say, this is you, this is the, like, I'm going to put you now in this box, right? So I listen first. So I want to know what your vision for health is. I want to understand what matters the most to you, right? And there are different, like a vision for health for different people is very different, right? So for me, what is your vision for health? That includes your appearance, your energy, your purpose, your relationships, your organ system harmony, your work-life balance, your ability to express your needs, wants, and desires, right? So for me, that's your vision for health, right? And all those things, right? Your organ system harmony is where the traditional Chinese medicine comes in, right? So if you have a certain lab result that's like high triglycerides, high cholesterol, right? A high triglycerides, or you have weight gain, right? Anything related to that, that would be a sugar imbalance, right? Which is probably related to an earth element imbalance. Okay.
Can you tell by looking at me that I have high cholesterol?
So I was able to tell that you right away. I asked
Yeah.
you about your hormones, right?
Yeah.
So I was able to tell that. Cholesterol is really hard to tell because I have very high cholesterol, right? As it's genetic,
Yeah.
right? So I actually am pescatarian, but I had hormone issues. So it's like, what comes first, a chicken? Like, is that influenced by my old hormone issues? But my mother also has high cholesterol, and I'm a big believer also in generational things that come from generation to generation, which is what I talk a lot. And that can show up as a lab result or a diagnosis, but really stems from an energetic imbalance, right? So it's kind of like an heirloom that we don't necessarily have to accept. So it's kind of understanding, though, that maybe targeting medication. So medication, which is the traditional Western way, which is, I'm not opposed, even when we chatted, I expressed to you a Western diagnosis that because I go by those.
Well, yeah, and yeah, we can back up for a sec.
Yeah.
So when we popped on, just for everybody listening, we were all talking about our reactions to the vaccine. And I think, I can speak for all of us when I say we're all incredibly grateful to have the vaccine. Doesn't mean there aren't like little things that have come with it. And for me personally, I got the Moderna arm resurgence quite a few times, which was strange. But Alana was able to look at me, and we've never met before, and was like, okay, but do you have hormonal imbalances? And, is that? And I was like, yes.
And I said, where were you in your cycle, right? Like, I knew that cyclically something was going to be affected because I knew you had a hormone sensitivity. And then you also mentioned that you're on birth control.
No,
So,
I'm not.
Oh, you're not. But
Yeah,
you mentioned that. Okay, so you're not on birth control, but you mentioned something about some sort of arm.
Yes, I got the Moderna arm.
Oh, the Moderna arm. Okay,
Yeah,
I thought you got like a shot of a birth control, but
Oh,
anyway.
no.
Okay. Good that you're not on birth control, though.
Yeah, I had, I think that's where my insulin resistance came from, actually. I feel like it probably was dormant, and then it exacerbated it a bit. But yeah, I gained 25 pounds in my first 3 months on birth control.
Yeah.
With no diet change, no exercise change. And yeah, that was what started this whole exploration for me in acupuncture and in Chinese medicine, because my gynecologist just said to me, she said, oh, well, you're just getting older. And I was like, oh, that's how it works. You gain 25 pounds in 3 months.
No, that's not true.
Yeah. But anyway.
I can attest that's not true.
So, okay, let's actually go into that, because that was one of my questions for you.
Yeah.
So you do mention that hormonal imbalance is often the root of the problem. What does that mean? And how can we start to fix that kind of as a society, honestly?
Yeah, no, great question. And first of all, I love that people are asking this question, because I think one of the things that's changed in the wellness landscape is that people are so much more educated and the language around wellness is this, it's like, whoa. So
Yeah.
I mean, I love that. I feel
Yeah.
like
And
back
even
in
hearing people
2007.
hearing people say, oh, you're like, I didn't do this workout because I don't want my cortisol to spike. Like, that's a huge shift in what people were saying even 2 years ago. Like, I feel like that wasn't even a thing people would say. So yeah, I agree with you for sure. And even just in the language people use.
I mean, 100%. And 2 years ago, that was what I told people. 3 years ago, I was telling people about their cortisol, which is what I was actually going to say right now to answer your question. Is that is actually really your cortisol balance and your ability to navigate and harmonize your nervous system from its sympathetic to parasympathetic and really train your body. And this is where mindfulness and meditation comes in. Applied mindfulness is really a practice that you need to learn, and it's really about how can you create a bigger container to take care of discomfort and uncomfortable feelings that are going to be from circumstances that you can control. How do we navigate that and become more skillful at doing that? And then how do we not invite in activities and people and experiences that make us feel like we're being chased by lions all the time, right? And that includes workouts. That includes, so teaching people boundaries, okay, boundaries, and how to take care of your whole emotional experience and actually have self-preservation from that sense be the most important thing that you could do for yourself as a self-care modality is super important. And there's so many different ways you could do that while still continuing to participate in your life and give and receive joy, because resourcing that is important too. It's not just about self-preservation and about what you need to do for you, because that's not going to make you happy and joyful. What's going to make you happy and joyful is also it's going to help increase those good hormones like serotonin, that you need, and decrease cortisol imbalance, right? But and how you do that is a combination of boundaries in your environment, understanding how to harmonize your natural energy, your feminine and masculine energy, and then how do you use food to help support your natural constitution. And then also when things go out of your control, what are your self-care action steps, your accountability to bring you back to balance, right? So that's basically what you do to help with your hormones, essentially. And then if it's obviously something that is more out of, where it's clinical, then there's functional supplementation we could do. There's herbs we could do, so those are things that I would do with my clients as well in tandem with all these things, but it's definitely in tandem. It's not just supplements. It's not, supplements and staying up till 2 a.m. and, answering emails.
Right.
That's not going to help.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I want to make sure that we do talk about Ayurveda and the temperatures of foods and the nourishment that you get and food as comfort, like you're saying. But first I want to talk about, you're saying like you can't take supplements, and I think you were saying you kind of did this to yourself too, where you were like, I'm doing all the things I should be doing, but I'm still feeling sick and burnt out. What for someone who lives in New York City, someone who lives in like a really high paced environment, it is hard to set these boundaries. So let's say you have a client who works a job that they love, but that is high stress and that is, maybe it's in Times Square and their commute it's going to raise cortisol. Like, what do you recommend? Are there any sort of tools that you can give these people to do, like, maybe before they go into the office or once they get there, to kind of just bring things down a little bit and back into more of an equilibrium?
Yes, absolutely. So I feel the first thing that we need to get to is for people to really get to that place of motivation. You got to really be motivated to feel good. That it sounds simplistic. it sounds simple, right? But it's not simplistic. That's what I meant.
Yeah.
You know, it's really important. You have to want to feel good, because part of what you're going to have to do is carve out a boundary for yourself, which means that you're going to have to make boundaries for yourself probably the night before, because in order to have a calm commute, you need to have your hierarchy of activities that are important for you. So I always say to my clients, what are your hierarchy of activities, right? That have nothing to do with work. If it's like working out, meditating, being present for my partner, going to dinner, you know, entertainment stuff, you need to know what your hierarchy is, and then you need to make time for those. And then you need to hold yourself accountable to that, whether that means you wake up at 6 a.m. now, right? To have that time, that 20 minutes for coffee, the 10 minutes for meditation, right? And then you give yourself bite-size, actionable steps that are doable. And then you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So I feel like, but a lot of it means that then the night before, if you're going to wake up at 6 a.m., you have to be attuned and pay attention to your activities the night before.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, and make boundaries there. You know, so if somebody emails you at 10:30 p.m., you have to get this skill where you don't answer that email at 10:30 p.m.
Yeah.
You don't check your DM, you know, and you have to learn to name that feeling of I have to respond as urgency, and then take care of that part of yourself that feels like it needs to respond, because that's what raises your cortisol.
Mm-hmm.
That's what does it. It's not the commute. It's not like all that stuff. It's your relationship to it, because there's chaos involved in the rest of it.
Yeah, absolutely. I had Kelsey J. Patel on recently. She's an author and a Reiki master, and her big thing that she talks about is micro changes for macro joy. And she was like, if your micro change is just going to be that you're turning off your Instagram, or you're setting a time limit on your phone for 20 minutes earlier than you thought it was going to be, like all these little things. And it's exactly what you're saying too, just these. It's a skill and it's a muscle that you need to learn how to train, but it is for sure like you just can't be responding all the time and having that, and thinking that that would lead to like a calm and balanced sort of way.
100%. That's so correct. And, again, like I can't stress it enough that even with the micro changes, because again, I agree, you have to be connected to your reason why. Like without that, it's going to feel like a demand on yourself over time. Like after that initial excitement energy of doing something new for yourself wears off, if you're not connected to your worthiness, if you're not connected to your deep feeling of deservedness, that you deserve this space, that you deserve this time, that you're not going to lose out on anything in your life by doing this. In fact, you're going to attract more into your life by doing this, and the right kind of more into your life by doing this. That's what I teach people. Because if you think about that and you feel into that, it's almost like, whoa, this is so simple. Everything kind of takes care of itself from there. I won't feel burnt out. I'll be able to make the right decisions. Everything feels inspired, rather than something that you're managing, like a strategy, right? Like I want something to be an inspired action, not a strategy to help something become better, to fix something,
Yeah. And just going into that mindset of like, oh, this is something that I get to do. Like how exciting, as opposed to this is something I need to do. So yeah, I totally agree with that. And I think that's just such a beautiful thing to take away, that like the more you take care of yourself, the luckier you feel, I think, to be able to participate in life as a happy person.
For sure. And what's interesting is, I didn't realize that I was doing that back in 2007 when I quit my job on the spot. I didn't realize, because I was so in my reactivity, like it was a reactive action. But I realized that I was so aligned with this philosophy that I didn't have language for, that I've been naturally did it, right? So I've actually naturally been doing all this stuff over the years. It actually took me my own healing journey to realize that I was my own guru like the whole time, a little bit sometimes, you know, and I needed other people, other experts, and what I like to call gurus, mainly because a guru means a dispeller of darkness. That's really what it means. And so I feel like it is just darkness that we're in when we don't see our light. So that's why I use that word, because I really like it. I find it to be the most aligned with what it is. But it's been really such a grateful experience to realize that my innate nature was to follow along this way. And I'm so passionate about getting people back in touch with their natural sense, because I think it is our natural sense to be with ourselves like that.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that. Can we talk about, Ayurveda for
Yes.
just a little bit, and how, so can you give us the basic, personality, not personality types, but I think it's just like the basic, I can't pronounce them correctly, so I'm going to have you do it.
Yes.
What those types are of, people, and how, because I've heard this before, but like the temperature of the food you eat is incredibly important.
Mm-hmm.
Like there's a lot of things that I think people aren't necessarily familiar with. And let's talk about like what kind of results people get after they sort of adhere to the things that are meant for them and the things that are right for them.
Sure. So the first rule of Ayurveda is that like increases like and opposites balance, right? So the three main constitutions in Ayurveda are Kapha, Pitta, and Vata. Okay. So Kapha is your traditional kind of earth, water element. Pitta is fire, it's heat. And Vata is air and ether, right? So if you think about like the energy of those, earth is grounded, it's earthy. Fire is fast moving, it's hot. And but it has fire has it, you can feel fire, right? Like you could see fire, whereas air is really fast moving, but you don't see it. Okay, so Vata is typically the most people are mostly Vata imbalanced because you don't see Vata and it's very airy. So even if your constitution isn't Vata, so this is why the practitioner is really important, the person who you're going to, because somebody can be presenting as an air constitution because their environment is very airy, and actually their real constitution is out of balance. And so an air element is being expressed, but they're not really air. Okay, so Vata, every element also has physical characteristics and emotional characteristics. So if you think about air elements, they're not very sturdy. So they're typically like thin, if you think about like thin-boned people, were almost like you could crack their bones, right? And if you think about an air diagnosis, would be osteoporosis, right? You think about something like that, right? So the bones, it's like brittle, right? So dry. And you think about an airy food, it's like salad, dry, or crackers, right? So if you see how Ayurveda, that's how Ayurveda kind of permeates all of life forces, because everything can be defined as Vata, Pitta, and Kapha, whereas you think of and seasonally. So what would the season of Vata be? It would be fall and early winter, right? Windy. But sometimes, like in spring, like we're having now, there's like windy days, but it's not, but it's not freezing, right? So it's interesting, right? We actually have to process a lot of, so it changes, so every season it changes. And so with Ayurveda, it's really interesting because it's about the person also and how imbalanced they are with their constitution they were born with, and how much they're being influenced by the constitution of the environment. And the environment is seasons, but it's also the people that you live with. It's your job, it's your commute, right? Like if the people around you, I have a new client that I just started with who is very kapha, but I met her and she expressed vata right away. Like there was pitta vata, like it was like fire coming at me, but she's 30 pounds overweight. She looks exhausted. And I knew right away that she's probably a kapha constitution, because her kapha is living outside of her, right? It's all living outside of her. The earth is living outside of her, and she's being influenced. And I immediately said, is there a lot of chaotic energy in your life? She's like, my husband is like, go, 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 go. He's like this, like major, and I have to like absorb it. And I knew right away. And then if you're in that place, you're probably attracted to foods like that, because again, you want the same food. So you're probably going to eat salads, and you're probably going to eat like raw veggies and a lot of raw stuff and a lot of cold stuff. What's going to balance you out is increasing your digestive fire, which is hotter foods and warmer foods and watery foods, right? So that's kind of Ayurveda in a nutshell. And then there's herbs that you could include in to make things hotter or change the flavor, or influence certain hormones. Obviously we've heard of turmeric that helps with liver, and detox, and cinnamon that helps with sugar. So there are certain things that I work with people on. But again, it's a combination of all the things. And it's a lot about boundaries.
Yeah.
Right? It's insight. So, so my philosophy with people, this is kind of how it works. Insight, which is kind of like, how did I get here? Your aha moments, like, oh my God, this is me, right? Like, I get me, this is kind of like, oh my God, that's great. Then it's compassion, right? Where we start to apply mindfulness and, reparenting all those parts and re-educating you how to be a good parent to your parts, and, understanding limiting beliefs and maybe places that you've exploited yourself, like in boundaries or things like that. Then empowerment, right? Where we create new beliefs and we create the new behaviors together. This is a collaboration that's inspired by you, and it's inspired by your vision for health. And then it's accountability, right? So the strategies is last, right? It's accountability, where it's like the meal plan, the exercise plan, where I tell you that you only eat raw food when the sun is up, and your digestion is high, and you don't eat sugar after 5 p.m. So, this is kind of where I would tell you that. And then when you don't do it, you're not punished, but you feel into the natural consequence of what happens, because you'll be in tune with your body. So you'll be like, oh, I feel really gross and brain foggy. And you won't be like, what do I need to do? Googling. You'll kind of know that you ate this and you hung out with that person, you gave them too much of your energy, you absorbed too much, you'll start to see the bigger picture of your whole metabolism, everything you're metabolizing, everything you're digesting, everything you're absorbing.
Yeah. And just like expanding the book of yourself, like
exactly,
just continuing to expand all the things that you know about yourself and what works well. And yeah, I love that so much. I'm fascinated with that. I could hear people talk about it forever. I think it's just the most interesting thing, and just something that is so unexplored relatively, and is just so incredibly important too.
Oh yeah.
So I love that so much.
Oh yeah. I mean, absolutely. And as I've gotten deeper into my own work with myself and people, I realized how much more depth there is. It's like, again, like I said, it's Ayurveda. What's known is so much kapha, pitta, vata, and like foods that are vata and foods that are pitta. But I really started to really become excited and interested about how we absorb these foods, and we absorb these foods, and that's where functional nutrition comes in. Your gut health, what contributes to leaky gut. Sometimes it's leaky energy in your life. It's like, it could be certain foods, but it could also be certain behaviors. So it's interesting how everything comes together, and certain behaviors could be because you're not living in your empowered energy, right? Like maybe you're doing way too much, you're over functioning, and you're living in your masculine energy, and you need to be more in your feminine energy. And maybe you're feeling insecure and a little more needy, or like kind of not feeling confident, you're being too passive in your life at work or in a certain area of your life. It's like understanding who you are and what you need and what your desires are and how to meet those for yourself to create and that's self-care, and then how to express that interpersonally to other people so that you could get the benefit of partnership in your life and community in your life, but from a place that's nourishing to you, and you don't feel like you're giving and you're not receiving, or you don't feel like you're receiving but you don't know how to receive it and you don't give back.
Yeah, we need to do a part 2. There's not enough time in the world for this. Okay, I want to talk business for a hot second.
Yes.
You offer a lot of services. So you offer one-on-one coaching, like you're talking about with your clients. You have self-guided courses in a few different lengths for people. You offer a membership. How do you do it all? And what kind of came first? And how have you sort of decided like what to pursue? Because it seems like you have a solution for everybody.
Well, thank you so much. I feel so seen. So thank you. So the one-on-one came first for sure. I mean, all my courses come from the one-on-one coaching. Then came the 28-day. So it's basically a top line, 28-day actionable steps with contemplation questions, reflections to kind of get you into getting your mind around viewing wellness from a place that's holistic in this way. Your environment, your food, what your motivation is for eating. And it gives you every 4 days, you get about 1 to 3 steps that you incorporate into your day. It teaches you how to journal, what to think about. So it's bite-sized, and you build on it. So, day 1 through 4, it's like, drink this amount of water and ask yourself this question and journal. And then day 5, you get 2 more prompts that you add on to the day 1 to 4. And then by the end, you have this whole new framework for how to think about wellness. And then with that, and in all of my groups, you have access to my Facebook group, which you have the community and people ask questions and I show up and pop in and do different talks and meditations and things like that. And then the 8-week course is basically an intensive course that touches on all the different topics that I found that I talk about in my one-on-one coaching with people. And it basically gives very comprehensive, again, insights, compassion, empowerment, and accountability methods. We have about 10 to 15 minute video modules, and there's PDFs and worksheets, meditations, yoga classes that support the modules. The modules are also written out so that you can read them. Gives a lot of background on the why about everything. So it's very much like almost like it's an intensive course on 8 specific topics that I found that most of my clients struggle with. Yeah. And then the membership is the one-on-one coaching. So I work with people on a very, very immersive, interactive basis. I work on a platform called Healthy, which is an interactive journal platform, also a chat feature where I can chat with my clients about their food and about all the things I want them to think about when they're eating. And I check that every day with my clients that are in the membership. So it's very high level concierge, very, very, they have a lot of access to me. So, it's very, very, it actually has the impact and the ability for people to see success with that is beyond. I've seen so many clients who've come to me and been like, I've tried this diet and I've tried this and that, find so much success and peace around doing the membership.
Wow. I love that so much. Okay. I want to get into rapid fire questions before our time is up. So, okay. Are you ready?
I'm so ready. Go.
Okay, let's do it. What is your absolute favorite way to sweat?
Running.
Wow. I thought you were going to say yoga.
No, I don't sweat in yoga anymore. I mean, I do, but not so much.
Yeah. What's your absolute favorite song to work out to? Like just that one song that gets you hyped.
This is such a hard one because I don't listen to music when I work out. I listen to podcasts.
So
like
the last person said that too.
So I could tell you the podcast. Yours, Armchair Expert and Smartless. Can that be okay?
Of course. If I am in the company of Armchair Expert, then yes. What is, I think actually you probably just said it, but software that you can't live without?
The healthy platform, for sure.
That's awesome. I've actually never even heard of that. I'm super excited to check it out. What's the best business advice you ever got?
Be true to yourself, be patient, and keep listening. Yeah.
Love it. If you could live anywhere in the world that is not your home, where would it be?
Probably Italy.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Love it.
Yeah.
Dream job besides what you're doing right now?
Oh, I'd for sure be a singer. I got into college as a singer, so I'm a musician as well. So
amazing. I can see that for sure. The artist thing comes through. Love it. What is one lesson that you took from 2020 that you want to keep with you?
One lesson that I took from 2020 is to be really grateful and to express gratitude, even for the smallest things, all the time. And to remember that we are in charge of our happiness and we're in charge of how our world is. And it's the little things that make up the big things. Yeah.
Wow. I love that so much.
Yeah.
Alana, thank you so much. Where can people find you? How can they work with you? How can they get this course? I know I'm literally about to sign up for the 28th.
So they can find me on Instagram. So at BeWell by AK, which has a link tree to all my links. But if you go to my site, www.bewellbyak.com, on my site, there you'll see where you could sign up for my courses as well. But I also have a blog that I update every week. And actually it has great information on there. So feel free to check that out. I also have a YouTube channel that I'm hoping to grow. So please check that out, Be Well by AK. And that's where you can find me. Yeah.
Amazing. And everybody we'll link to all those things in the show notes. So that you guys have them. Alana, thank you so much. This was so eye-opening and I need to have you back for part 2.
I can't wait.
So much more.
I can't wait. I'm so excited. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, you did such a great job.
Yeah,
so